What's going on, YouTube? So, Dagger Axiom 8.5, Dagger Rewind Medium. What's the difference? Which one's better? I've paddled them both. I've had the Axiom 8.5 for quite a while, paddled it for a few years. I've had the Rewind Medium for about 2 months and been paddling it a good bit and really have enjoyed this boat. And as I looked online, there's really not a lot online comparing the two. The Axiom's a bit of the forgotten half slice at this point. You've got the Ripper, you've got the Party Brap, you've got Waka, you've got everybody out doing half slices. So the Axiom has kind of fallen by the wayside, but you still see a lot of them on the river. So I thought it'd be worth a moment to compare the two since I've been paddling a good bit of them. So let's dive in and take a look at the two. All right. First off, on the rocker, we have got right at the parting line. It's right about 11 inches for that rocker on the Axiom 8.5. And on the Ripper Medium, we're right at about 14 and a quarter, 14 and a half, somewhere in that ballpark. Length on the Axiom 8.5 is shocker, just under 103 inches long, and on the Dagger Rewind, we are right at 105 and a quarter or so. And as far as width, this is approximately 25 inches, give or take a hair, at the cockpit. And same thing here, we're about 24 and a half, somewhere in that ballpark for the Medium Rewind. And I'll put the specs online with this video. Basically though, the Rewind is about, I think it's about 5 gallons more volume. So you've got more volume in the bow, which helps carry that through, drops really nicely. You've got more rocker, and I don't know if it'll really show up well, just because of forced perspective on camera. But if you're looking at these in person, I mean, the rocker on the Axiom is noticeably and appreciably higher. One thing we should measure as well is the kick rocker at the stern. We're right at about 10 and a half, maybe just a hair above that. And look at that, we're about a little less in the back, about 10 on the back of the Medium Rewind. So, a little bit of a difference there. A couple things to note on the decks. You've got grab loops here, grab handles on the bow. They are perpendicular to the cockpit and to the bow, which really makes it easier to hold. The Axiom is oriented parallel with the length of the boat. And as you can see, if you're pulling on this, or if you were a swimmer or something, this is or dragging this boat, it's gonna be digging into the side of your hand. I really wish they would stop designing kayaks. If they would just rotate this that way, just like they did on the Rewind, makes a huge difference. Additionally, just for the cockpit, you've got another grab loop here, which could be used for safety. If you're pinned, let's say you've gotten pinned into somewhere and you need to clip a boat in, or you need to extract a boat, having an extra safety point is good. You do not have that on the Axiom. Instead, you've got these two cutouts right here where the foam pillar inside goes and holds that in place. But you do not have that on the Axiom. There is no grab loop, but you've got it here on the Medium Rewind, which is great. And as far as the stern, they both have a grab loop right behind the cockpit, which is really, really good. They both have them right here at the stern, but again, this one's got it parallel with the length of the kayak, which really digs into your hand. If you're teaching or instructing out of this, or one of your friends swims, it's just more painful. Having them oriented this way is just such a better design. And they actually have these a little bit more recessed, where up here on the Axiom, they they poke out a little bit more. So, you know, the foam pillar back here, they've got a bolt with a little cap on it instead of these, you know, these cutouts here in the plastic mold that holds the foam inside there in place. You know, I think this is probably a stronger and better design. This boat has got, if you look right here, you see that red button right there. You unscrew that screw and you can see those notches down there behind it. This is their playboat seating, which is super adjustable, very easy to move. I can undo this, slide this seat forward in the field, slide that seat back. Very adjustable. It does have the Contour Ergo Dagger outfitting, which frankly it cannot be beat. So comfortable. But this is their more playboat oriented outfitting, which is great because if you're creaking or trying to get on some heavier stuff, you can move this seat forward to unengage that stern a little bit more. If you really want to play, you can slide it back in the field. Much easier to adjust. So also in the back, you've got a solid foam pillar right here. It goes the length of the stern. And then forward here, same thing. You've got a solid foam pillar here that sets all the way forward. You've got the adjustable bulkhead with the typical screw adjustments here. You just move those brackets. But this has got a foam pillar that you'll see in a second is different than what you've got in the Rewind. Got the typical ratchet bands for the ratchet straps for the back band. You know, you cannot beat the Dagger outfitting. And frankly, they're both the Contour outfitting, so you've got the same comfort between the boats. You got the leg lifters, everything. You've got space for a water bottle and everything. Here we are in the cockpit of the Rewind. We've got the Contour Ergo outfitting. Got a foam pillar, goes all the way back in the stern. But the big difference in this outfitting, this is their creaking outfitting. This is not adjustable like the playboat outfitting that you've got in the Axiom. So to adjust this, you have to undo some bolts, slide things forward. You know, it's still somewhat adjustable, but nowhere near as adjustable as the Axiom. You got the leg lifters, everything, just super comfortable. Another big difference, you've got a solid plastic step-out pillar. For creaking, that makes it way safer. This is much more stable. If you got pinned, you could actually step out on it, so it's called a step-out pillar. The bulkhead for the foot is the same adjustment as on the Axiom, but having this creaking center pillar here is far superior than the foam outfitting. You know, you can still adjust the seat. You undo this and a couple bolts and it all slides. You've got room for a throw bag and also for a drink right here. But having the creaking outfitting is a huge upgrade. Not only is it stouter, sturdier, safer, the Axioms were notorious for oil canning pretty much underneath the seat. And this just doesn't give the structural rigidity that their beefier creaking outfitting does. So I expect to see these lasting longer than the Axioms have. Because it's pretty well known they oil can under the seat because you got the playboat seating in place instead of the creaking seating. So love having this safety pillar here, the step out pillar. Love having this extra grab loop right here, right in front of the cockpit, because if I'm pinned, I can actually grab this from my boat, clip a carabiner in, whatever. It's a much safer setup for creaking than the Axiom ever could be. You know, one of the big differences between these two boats, they paddle very differently. They're both half slices, but they genuinely paddle very differently. The limited rocker on the Axiom, what that typically would translate to in the long time I've been paddling this, is that if you get on a steeper wave, this bow is going to purl out on you. You're going to drive that nose into the face of the wave in front of you. It's going to purl. You're either going to get ended, do an ender, or you're going to get peeled out or submarined. Constant issue. Great surfing boat, but the lack of rocker really became a limitation when surfing. They have exponentially fixed that with the Rewind. This thing, I've not had any issues with it. Just that little bit of rocker just makes it so much more of a pleasure to surf, in my opinion. It's a looser surf than the Axiom. It surfs different, and frankly, the tail is a little more prone to getting loaded, giving you even more rocker than what the Axiom would do with the tail. I've really noticed like places like Hellhole and different places on the Ocoee, that tail really wants to load just a little bit, raise that rocker even more, which just means you can surf even steeper waves. Before we get into how they paddle differently, let's go ahead and flip these boats over and take a look at the underside. All right. So here we've got the underside of the hull, and you can really see these rails on that Axiom. They're still there on the Rewind, but they have just taken a little bit of that edge off. If you look on the Axiom and come all the way up to the bow, that hard edge is there all the way down, basically all the way to the stern, almost the whole length. Flattens out in the center with these hard rails means it's a great surfing boat if you can overcome the fact that the bow purls very frequently and very easily. But you've got hard edges, hard rails the whole way down. Whereas on the Rewind, I don't know if you can see this with the black plastic and the sliding, but at the Rewind on the bow, there's really no rail, and it really just starts to slowly fade in and come in until you get about where your feet are at, and then center of the cockpit, it's got a pretty good rail all the way down. And again, it just like on the bow, it just fades out into really not much there at the stern. So similar but different. And you know, I would say this is just a little bit smoother rail than what you've got on the Axiom. So how do they paddle different? Long and short of it is, had I known how much more I would like the Rewind on a continual basis, I would have bought it a long time ago. And frankly, at this point, I don't know that I'll paddle my Axiom again. So they kind of took all the flaws and the shortcomings of the Axiom and they fixed them in the Rewind. So experientially, what I can tell you is the Axiom's definitely a slower boat. It's obviously shorter, which is going to be, you know, a slower boat. Anytime you have a lesser waterline length, you're going to have a slower boat. So there's no way around that. It's a slower boat. It surfs well. I always enjoyed surfing. It's a great surfing boat. Those hard chines all the way back everywhere make for a very crisp, sharp surfing experience. The only thing I would say when you're surfing the Axiom, with the lack of bow rocker, you're going to be constantly purling that bow. Happens all the time. You submarine the bow, you purl it, it'll throw you off the surf, and you know, you just got to watch where you're surfing and how steep that wave is, because that's just the nature of not having any bow rocker. As far as verticality, which really to me is the real point of having a half slice, if you're not playing with verticality, if you're not getting it vertical, if you're not doing stern stalls and stern squirts, you really may as well just be in a creeker or something else, because otherwise the stern is just kind of a liability for you in steeper creek situations. But what makes a half slice so fun is you've got, you know, creeker bow or river running bow forward, and you've got a playful stern. So really that river play is what a half slice is all about, in my opinion. The Axiom with its shorter tail, you know, it doesn't hold verticality for a protracted period of time as well as the Rewind does. It's a little harder to get vertical, in my opinion. I would have to have an eddy line to get it vertical. And in flat water, like a lot of half slices, it's not the easiest boat to get vertical. You can do it, but it takes some effort and some work, and you've got to have your technique dead on. But then step in the Rewind. All that's different. You still have that crisp rail that is, you know, for most of the length of that boat. Because they have loosened it up a little bit at the bow and the stern, though, it's got a looser ride to it. It just rides a little bit different than the Axiom does, and I would say it's a little looser to paddle. It's super crisp when you want it to be and you need it to be, and you can carve into eddies and surf it like nobody's business. But with that slight taking down of the edge of the rail there, it's just a little looser, and in my opinion, a little more forgiving than the Axiom is. Saying that, it's still a pretty aggressive design that wants to be paddled. It's more stable when I'm moving this boat than I am just sitting still. It definitely wants to be paddled somewhat aggressive. It doesn't have to be as aggressive as, say, the Ripper, that takes a very aggressive paddle to excel well. The Rewind's still a very forgiving boat, but it definitely is, you know, approaching that kind of higher performance design, in my opinion. Having the increased bow rocker makes this thing just such a great joy to surf in. And on top of that, it's just like almost like paddling the Phantom when it comes to boofing over holes. And in fact, this boat is probably my favorite boat that I've ever done boof stomps in or boofing. Because the way that stern is designed, you can kind of lean it on that edge and lean it on that rail. And when you do that, that stern will get loaded, which pops that bow. And so you can time it just perfectly and launch that boat. It's just some of the best boof stomps I've ever had have been in this Rewind. Just such a joy. The way that the stern engages as you paddle it is something you can really learn to address and accommodate and really kind of take advantage of it. It's like an added bonus feature on top of your regular paddling. You can engage that stern at different times in different ways that make it just awesome. So when you're coming into a hole, if you're in a class 4 hole, if you come into that and you drop that tail just a little bit, that tail engages, and instead of on the Axiom where it'd want to maybe back ender you, most of the times it's going to get you maybe up at about a 45 and it just scoots you out. Shoots you right out of that hole, just like the modern creekers do. A lot of the modern creekers are designed, if that stern gets engaged, they push you out instead of flipping you. I love the way the Rewind engages the stern when you're doing steeper stuff, more technical stuff. It really just engages that stern, pushes you out of holes. It boofs right over them. This bow rocker, just like a creek boat. I mean, it's such a great boat to paddle in higher flows and creakier environments. As far as verticality, it is so fun to get vertical. I find the Rewind to be much easier to hold verticality for an appreciable length of time. I find it easier to get vertical. An eddy line definitely helps, but it can definitely get some verticality in flat water if you're using good form. I'm not going to say it's easy, so if you are a beginning kayaker and you buy this Rewind and you think you're going to go out and stern squirt it tomorrow, this is not the boat for you. That is not a beginning stern squirt boat, right? It's going to take some proper form and proper technique, but if you know what you're doing, it is a blast, and it'll hold that verticality for so long. It's so much fun. And you know, there's something about how they've designed that tail that once you get it engaged, it just really holds that balance super nicely. I've been really, really pleased with it. So it's got better verticality, boofs better, it's faster. I love the way it surfs. It's a little looser on the water than the Axiom was, but it's still super sporty. It's definitely going to be sportier and edgier than, say, the Brap or any of those, which are displacement half slices. So this is still kind of going to feel like a Mamba hole, kind of, sort of. But it still has this kind of forgiving looseness to it that I really have found to appreciate and really, really enjoy. It is, in my opinion, far superior for what I want to do than the Axiom is. The Axiom is still a great boat. So if you're in the market, the budget's tight, you know, you want to pick up an older Axiom and spend a little bit less money, the Axiom's still a good choice. You know, it's still a good boat. You can learn a lot in it. You can have a lot of fun in it. But if you're looking for a half slice that can do some pretty good creaking, that's got a pretty creaky feel to it, run some pretty stout stuff, but still be very playful, I don't think you can go wrong with the Rewind. You know, there's a bunch of different half slices out there right now. And I would say the Rewind kind of fits in that spectrum of creaky boat that can play versus play boat that can kind of creak. The Rewind is definitely, I would say, more creek oriented, more technical oriented as far as running, you know, stouter whitewater, but still very playful. To me, it's a happy medium. It's a well-balanced boat. It's relatively forgiving, yet also very performance driven. It's very playful, yet it's very stable when you get into a more difficult whitewater environment. It's very good to paddle on pretty much a wide spectrum with pretty good stability. It's easy to roll. And the bow rocker and the way that stern engages when you're boofing over something just really can help launch you out. And I got to say, that's one of the biggest things I've noticed the difference between the Axiom and the Rewind is just the way that stern engages to push you out over holes and features that you're trying to boof over. So really hadn't seen a lot of videos to detail the differences between the Axiom and the Rewind, and really thought it'd be worthwhile to do a video of the two because you still see a lot of the Axioms out there. They're still popular boats and a lot of people own them. So I hope this helps, and I hope to see you on the river. Come south.